Well then, are we ready to get going, or we still have folks shuffling in? Shannon.
I would recommend giving it a minute or two to get
Yeah.
people in set up. But I am recording, so everyone knows.
I see that.
Yeah, people are just starting to come in now. It's great.
Okay.
Let's give it a few minutes.
Yeah. I'll let people know in the chat.
Good morning, everyone. As the slide says, the webinar will begin shortly. We're just waiting for folks to get in the virtual room, but welcome and good morning. We're using a different variant of WebEx this morning. That's got slightly different controls than the kind we used last time. So this is those were the controls. I can actually I'll advance it and show that again. So you can oh my gosh, you can raise your hand to ask a question verbally, not on mute, but by by hitting the little hand. And the yellow hand to the right.
Okay, I think we should get started, Norm. Does everyone want to turn on their cameras?
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Now, people are still signing on. We had quite a lot of registrations for this event this morning, which is our 11th Builder Breakfast, Richmond Builder Breakfast, and I know we've got pretty significant attendees from their practice in Richmond, but also elsewhere in the Lower Mainland, and we welcome you to this event. It's a 2-hour event. We're covering off a lot of content, and we're going to split that off with our staff team that's going to take different facets and different parts of the program. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But welcome. The session is recorded. It's being recorded now, and as I mentioned, we have 2 hours allotted for this event. So. First off, we've got joined by my colleagues from the building department, Mohammed Hossein Niradar, who's our building energy specialist. A lot of you probably know him. And Luca Mladen, who's our plan reviewer. And both Mohammed and Luca are going to take various segments of the presentation and for a deep dive into detail on processes and some of the interesting sort of adjustments and pathways that the city has set up for plan review, approvals, building permits, and all that, and relaxations. And from the sustainability department, my awesome colleague Nicholas Heap, sustainability project manager, is going to be covering off the proposed changes for 2022, GHGI, greenhouse gas intensity markers, where things are going, and also some of the design implications of high performance. I'll intro the slide deck today, and then have a portion at the end where I'm going to talk about some the next set of incentives from the city of Richmond for high performance training from BCIT. We had a pretty successful round last year and earlier this year, and I'll have some stats from that and some feedback and cover that off. I'm sure you'll be interested in hearing that. This is obviously continuing professional credit worthy affair. So we definitely ask you that you attend as much as possible the entire event if you can.
Yeah, those credits are awarded by time. So BC Housing has told us that full attendance of the seminar is worth 2 points, but that is done on the basis of time spent on the call. We've got your times for when you have logged into the call and when you log off, and that is how the points will be awarded.
Thanks, Nick. And last but certainly not least, someone we couldn't actually do these events without, that's Shannon Kaplan, who's our communication specialist for engineering and public works. And Shannon's going to be doing a number of things, and she's been interfacing with you directly if you've had questions and things like that. We're going to be monitoring the chat. I know Shannon's going to be doing that as well. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. So without further ado, let's get underway. So I'm going to basically start. Actually, just a sec. I better share my screen first. Now we can start. How's that? Can everybody see the first slide?
Not yet, Norm.
Oh. Okay. How's that?
Yep.
Yes.
There we go. Shared the wrong screen. All right. Welcome to our 11th Builder Breakfast, virtual Builder Breakfast, I should say, not the Builder Breakfast that we've done since 2018, but the virtual ones. Like as I mentioned to our affair, health break in the middle, 5 minutes, just to refill coffee and other things. But basically, as I mentioned, Nicholas will be covering off the 2022 step code requirements for Part 9 buildings. Now, these are the ones that are in effect or in force now that came into force in July. Some of the slides you've seen before, but we've comprehensively included them in today's presentation so you can get that big picture again and see where we are now and where we're going. Related to that, some projects can be triggered within stream provisions, which are where the current conditions don't apply. So Nick will be covering that off as well. And importantly, as you move to high performance, some implications, there's ramifications for design. And certain designs are going to be easier to achieve the top levels of step code, passive house, for example, with some adjustments in form and character. So Nick will cover that off, that it's particularly to Part 9 residential construction as part of that. And after our health break, we're going to get into some detail on floor space bonuses, so what they are and how to secure them. And there's been some tweaks on that, and I think you'll be pleased to hear the adjustments that have been made. And so we're going to lay that all out. But from an application, permit, plan review side, you'll see in detail what we're looking for and what to watch out for in terms of your design and your project on that. And that includes things like minimum lot setbacks and how we treating external insulation in the side yards and all that. And as I mentioned before, be covering off subsidized training opportunities at the tail end. I'm sure you want to hear that. We've got a really good offer, basically 50% subsidy offer on some incredible training. We'll get into that later, but without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nick to recap and bring us forward on our 2022 step code requirements.
Excellent. Thanks, Norm. Yeah, so here we go. Here is our adopted bylaw and staff's proposed schedule for energy step code requirements going forward to 2027. So the left side of that chart, which is in green, is in adopted bylaw. The gray portion is staff's current recommendations on where requirements should go over time. We are showing this to you so that there are no surprises. Certainly when we revise, and the context of the step code does change and evolve over time, but we take this commitment to you seriously. So as much as possible, we try and make this no surprises. This really is our best understanding and set of recommendations about where things will go when we present to council. So hopefully that's of use to you to understand how things are going to progress over the next while. Next, Norm. But right now, next slide. Yeah, but right now we're here. These are the new requirements that were adopted in July 2022, and I'll be looking at that in a bit more detail. Next. So right now, I've described these as the three minimum options. Norm and I have a discussion about whether that's the correct vocabulary or not, but understand that at the moment, if you would like to build to step 3, this is the minimum you can do. If you want to build to step 4, this is the minimum you can do. If you want to build to step 5, these are the minimum options you have available. Strictly speaking, step 5 is our basic requirement. And at step 5, you have a choice of building to a TEDI metric. And you'll see the numbers here that I've posted are not the ones that are posted in the BC Building Code, but rather the heating degree adjusted TEDI values for Richmond, because they are somewhat lower than the absolute TEDI numbers that are shown in the BC Building Code. So as a service to yourselves, this is what the heating degree adjusted TEDI is for Richmond. But at step 5, you also have the option of using the percent better than reference house option. So at step 5, that's 50% better than the reference house as a way of complying with the building envelope requirement. Then we have our mechanical efficiency requirement, the MUI. And as you can see there, it's 25 kilowatts per square meter per year, or 24 kilowatt hours, I should say, per square meter per year of conditioned space, or slightly higher if you have air conditioned space is more than 50% of your conditioned area for your building. And then we have our air tightness target of 1 air change per hour. So that's at step 5. Now, if you would like to have the option of building to a lower step, then at step 4 is an option that's available for you. You'll note that at step 4, you don't have the option of building to the percent better than reference house for the building envelope. The mechanical efficiency follows from the step code, as does the air tightness. And then finally, you have an option to build to step 3 with the addition of a low carbon energy system. And in that case, again, you don't have the option of building to the percent better than reference house. You'll need to build to a TEDI metric, and we've shown the heating degree adjusted one there, which is the easiest to hit. And then we have our MUI targets, and then we have our air tightness target of 2.5 air changes per hour. Now you'll see that there is now a carbon intensity target at step 3. That is how the low carbon energy system is being defined for the purposes of the STEP code as of July of this year. And so you will need to model the energy usage of your proposed building, and you'll need to reduce greenhouse gases to 2.5 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per year per square meter of conditioned floor space or better. And that is, this is intended to be consistent with a home that has either space heating or domestic hot water electrified. So that would be an electric baseboard or a heat pump device. And in most cases, that 2.5 kilograms is consistent with that, and that was why the metric was set that way by the province. Let's go on.
Yeah, just if I may, Nick, as Nick pointed out, there's 3 options available. Step 5 is the outright bylaw requirement, but you can also go to step 4, meeting certain conditions, or step 3, meeting certain conditions, and that's the way it's structured. We've always been about giving our building and design community options in terms of performance, or at least 2 options. This is the first time we've had 3, and we've signaled that out in some of our earlier breakfasts that we were heading this way, of course. And so this will, I guess, be in effect, obviously, this year and into 2023, just so you know.
Next slide, Norm.
You bet. Sorry.
So just to make life more interesting, the province is updating the BC Building Code at the end of this year. What I've shown here is I've mapped in the changes that have been proposed by provincial staff for incorporation into the BC Building Code, and that involves some adjustments to the energy step code. So you'll see that at step 5, the percent better than reference house goes down to 40 from 50%. They've introduced a percent better than reference house for the mechanical efficiency requirement, but the province has stipulated in their draft recommendations that if you do the percent better than reference house, then you need to do both envelope efficiency and mechanical efficiency. It's certainly the case that if you choose the envelope efficiency percent better than reference house route, then you need to also do that for the mechanical efficiency, as I understand it. The other another big change is air tightness. They're including 2 other metrics, 2 other ways of developing an air tightness score that are equivalent to the air changes per hour metric. These alternative metrics produce better results when it comes to small homes, and I believe that there's a metric that works best for larger buildings as well. So it's the province is adopting this on the recommendation of building experts who think this will be more equitable. Finally, those percent better than reference house for mechanical efficiencies, the number that I'm showing is the number that applies to housing units with more than 300 cubic meters of conditioned airspace. There is a schedule that it will be in the building code that gives different numbers for different volumes of houses, but that is the one for over 300 meters. So for small houses, those numbers change. So a bit more complication, but these are proposed. They're not yet adopted. So we'll go for the rest of this presentation with what's in code at the moment. Next slide. So let's just take a little bit of a closer look at step 5. So again, we've got 3 options when it comes to the building envelope efficiency. We have the absolute TEDI, we have the heating degree adjusted TEDI, which is the one that we're showing on this chart. And then at step 5, you also have the option of building to percent better than reference house. For mechanical efficiency, there is at the moment no reference house target that can be hit in step code at level 5. So what you have there are the MUI targets for conditioned space and for homes with air conditioning. And then we have the air tightness target of 1 ACH. So there's no greenhouse gas requirements, and you can use a percent better than reference house at step 5. Next, Norm. Step 4, you do not have the option of using percent better than reference house for building envelope efficiency, although there is a percent better than reference house option when it comes to mechanical systems efficiency. So instead of doing a MUI, you can do percent better than reference house for mechanical efficiency. Air tightness is 1.5 air changes per hour. Again, there are no greenhouse gas requirements at step 4. At step 3, next slide, Norm. Yes. Again, you can't use the percent better than reference house option. You have a choice of options when it comes to mechanical efficiency. You can either use MUI or the percent better than reference house option. Air tightness is 2.5 air changes per hour. And at step 3, there's the low carbon energy system requirement. And as I noted before, the standard that you need to meet is 2.5 kilograms per meter squared per year, which is consistent with space heating or domestic hot water has been electrified. Next, Norm. Right, let's talk a little bit more about that 2.5 kilograms target, because that itself is shorthand. This set of greenhouse gas targets is taken directly from what the province is currently proposing, but you'll see it has 3 components. There's a minimum allowance that's designed with small houses in mind, because it is difficult for small homes to meet a pure intensity target. So there is a minimum allowance that covers small housing units. There is an intensity target which scales as the conditioned floor space of the housing unit increases, and then there is a maximum cap. So, once you get above about 335 square meters, I believe it is, for a single housing unit, the greenhouse gas target does not go up because it is in reflection of the fact that it is easier for larger homes to meet a given greenhouse gas target. So those are the numbers put forward by the province. We are this is completely in line with what the province is proposing for introduction at the end of the year. So hopefully that's clear. So if you've next slide, Norm. It's important to say that this pertains to a housing unit. So, but that a housing unit, as the province means it, does not apply to a secondary suite. So if we have a detached house, that is going to be 1 unit, and the greenhouse gas requirements would treat the detached house as 1 unit, even if a secondary suite was in it. If you have a duplex, then you have 2 housing units, and so this is the greenhouse gas requirement for each unit, and so the total for the building would be ×2. If you had a 4-unit townhouse building, you would have this greenhouse gas requirement ×4 within the building as a whole. But again, if there are secondary suites in some of these townhouse units, that doesn't give you more than 4 units. It's the principal units that are being counted when it comes to this greenhouse gas requirement. And again, this is in lockstep with what the province's definitions are. So let's talk about in-stream provisions. Next slide. Because, and this is consistent with what we have done before when energy step code requirements have been increased. So if your development was subject to a development permit, and that permit was issued prior to July 1st, 2022, then you can build to the previous energy step code requirements that were in effect as of December 2020. If you have a development permit application that was accepted before July 1st, 2022, and it is still ongoing, it's still in process, then in order to build to the previous requirements before July of this year, you need to get a recommendation of approval from the development permit panel prior to July 1st, 2023. And in addition to that, you'll need to submit a complete building permit application, by which we mean all plans showing all the building details prior to July 1st, 2023. So under those conditions, you can still build to the requirements that were put into place as of December 2020. If you don't meet those requirements, then the July 2022 Energy Step Code requirements apply to your development. Next slide. So now let's look at design responses to the Energy Step Code requirements. This is just a quick overview. If folks are interested, this is something that we can devote a future virtual builder breakfast to. But there was a recognition by staff that as we start going towards the highest levels of the Energy Step Code, it's not simply a matter of putting in more mechanicals or putting more insulation on the walls. The design of the home or the design of the building becomes an important factor in the overall efficiency. And so as a summary of the design responses that the city is expecting to see as we move forward with the Energy Step Code, here's a summary of the kinds of things that we're expecting to see, that we are prepared to see as folks are bringing forward projects going forward. And this is of particular relevance to our form and character guidelines. So if you're going through a development permit process, the city has a range of development form and character guidelines that developments are expected to meet. This is what we expect to happen as folks are meeting both high performance energy requirements and the city's existing form and character guidelines. We would expect to see more compact massing of buildings that reduce the size of the thermal envelope relative to the volume of the building. We would expect, as a result, somewhat simpler building and roof forms that would enhance thermal performance for the same reason. You're reducing the amount of surface area to the volume of the building. And we'll expect fewer complex junctions where you've got, changes in plane at 3 directions at once. So things less bay windows, fewer dormers, recesses, and stepping. We're not saying that these things will go away entirely, but we would expect that they're going to be used a bit more judiciously. They will be used to effect going forward, because these complex junctions it's often a place where a thermal bridging occurs. And so you'll, generally speaking, get better performance if you have fewer of those kinds of features in a given building. Next. Another area would be orientation and shading. So we think it's going to be increasingly important for buildings to be oriented towards the solar resource, and the orientation of windows. The large windows on the west or on the south and the east of the building are going to pick up heat during the day. It could lead to overheating in summer. Large windows on the north can lose heat, especially in the winter, and so and that's going to affect the overall energy performance of the building. So we expect to see more emphasis on the strategic use of those windows to best effect for energy purposes. We expect to see external shading devices, particularly on south and west facades, and that can involve balconies or fins, blinds, shutters, the planting of deciduous trees. These are all ways of providing shading in the summer months while providing light and access and views. Next, Norm. We will expect to see a lower window to wall ratio, particularly for larger Part 3 buildings, but this could come into play for some Part 9 buildings. If you've got large view windows, for instance, we would expect to shift towards a fewer number of larger windows rather than a lot of smaller windows or multi-pane windows, because the section of the window that loses the most heat energy is not the pane glass, it is the frame of the window. And so when you have a larger window, you have more glass and less frame on average. And so we expect to trend towards that. We expect to see a shift towards higher window sills, because generally speaking, you're not looking through the bottom of the window, you're looking through the window a little higher up. A higher sill reduces the window sill without compromising the daylighting of the building or the amenity to the occupants. We'll also expect to see more operable windows for natural ventilation in developments coming forward. Next, Norm. So, sort of just summarizing what I've said so far, we've got some buildings on the left which have been built in Richmond in the past, and of course these are totally code compliant. But as we move towards higher energy performance requirements, what we expect to see is a shift towards simpler volumes with less complex junctions, as I had mentioned before. So perhaps we'll be seeing, and frankly, we expect to see designs coming forward that are looking a little bit more like these pictures on the right. Next, Norm. When it comes to balconies, balconies are very important in Richmond, in Part 3 buildings especially, but also in townhouses. Balconies can be a major source of heat loss because the structure tends to penetrate through the building envelope and can be a major route for heat loss if you're using conventional balcony techniques. Luckily, there are a number of ways, a number of approaches to building balconies that reduce this heat loss at balcony connection points. And I've got another pretty picture to show some of those approaches. Next, Norm. So I've got these the four diagrams below here. So and this is certainly a Part 3 building. Although the same principle does apply to a lesser extent for Part 9 buildings, you've got a lot of thermal bridging through a conventional balcony construction, as we commonly do it here in Richmond at the moment. But there are ways of significantly reducing that through the use of self-supported balconies, where you've got external supports for the balcony and a tie-in back to the building that can have an insulated block that is reducing heat transfer through the building envelope. There are hung balconies where you are bolting the balcony in and then tying it back with an additional support higher up. You can also have a supported balcony from the underside where it's where you've got supports coming in from underneath. And then there is a thermally broken cantilevered balcony. Again, this is mostly a Part 3 technology, but you've got a highly insulative block that allows you to have a balcony that looks very, very much like our current extended slab balconies, but have a much higher insulation value than our current technologies. So there's a range of options to reduce heat loss through the use of through balconies, and we do expect to see more of this going forward as folks are building to higher energy efficiency requirements. Next, Norm. Finally, what we expect to see is a bit of a shift away from building articulation, which is to say to take a single building and to disaggregate it into its various components as a way of making the building more legible, as a way of providing delight and visual interest. The most straightforward way of articulating a building is to change the shape of the building, to create physical little details in the shape of the building. But there are many, many ways of articulating a building that can involve things like texture, colors, different materials, patterning. All of these things serve to set out one part of the building relative to another. And these are all ways of achieving the building articulation that provides the visual interest and visual delight that we liken in buildings. And I've got Norm, I've got next slide. Got some pictures here. So, you know, what we have in these pictures are pretty volumetrically simple buildings, but they are highly articulated. It's very easy to distinguish one housing unit from the next, and this is sort of in a townhouse um, uh, frame of reference. But what we're seeing here is a lot of use of color, of different building materials that distinguish one part of the building from the other. Um, some use of different textures even that result from the different materials. And in the bottom right picture, what we have here is balconies and other elements. We've got window shading devices, as we see that in the top right as well, that provide a lot of interest and make the building shape more interesting. But all of these things are external to the actual building envelope. And so you can provide this that's sort of almost articulated form, but it's doing so outside of the building envelope, and so it doesn't have the energy efficiency cost of pushing out and pulling in the building and creating a lot of complex edges or complex corners. That is a real quick overview of the kinds of changes that we expect to see. And here it is with stuff is not grayed out. Next slide as well. When we provide the slide deck, I'll just give you those two so that they're easy to manage. If folks are interested in spending more time on this, on design options, we'd be happy to do that at a future virtual builders breakfast. But that's sort of a high level overview. And it's just to let you know that we're expecting to see a shift in the designs that proponents are coming up with as they're bringing new projects forward as an effective response to these new higher performance requirements for energy efficiency that also keep the city's form and character guidelines in mind. And there we go. And so at this point, Norm, it might
Just
be...
that we do an agenda check, and also check in if there's been some questions through the chat, and maybe we can spend some time, because I think we're right on track, or a little faster than estimated. So
We do have a hand up. Doro Cornesu, would you like to ask your question? Okay. Another hand up is Chu Chen. I'm just going to ask him to unmute. Would you like to ask your question, Chu Chen?
Yeah, I think it's very good. I mean, like information I presented. I mean, in order to make all these things work, I think we all have to work together. For example, actually, like, I quite appreciate it because I mean, like, I'm building the house under step code 4 right now.
Okay.
I mean, like, and what I learned from the Build It Right, I mean, the building science provider, I mean, the education provider, I mean, they got all kind of facility to test, I mean, the air leak and other stuff. It's working quite well. And I quite,
great.
that's, I mean, like, right now, actually, like, even though we don't have the window in, we're not supposed to call for shielding inspection, but after I discussed with Raj, the building inspector yesterday, and he willing to come out to inspect the sheeting in order for me to make all those A-type work quickly before the rain come. This is the thing actually we need to coordinate and work together with the city, the building officer, I mean, like, to make the thing work well.
Well, it's good to hear about that. That the city is working constructively with you as you're working on your project. Certainly, the interest of the city is we're doing what we can, and we're very happy to help the industry build to success. Our objective is that that builders can build effectively and successfully and profitably to these new requirements, so that we've got a better building stock and a healthy industry. And Norm's going to be speaking more about a part of how we hope to be of real use to builders later in the meeting. And of course, these information sessions are another way. But we don't want surprises. We want to help you adapt to these requirements as successfully as possible.
That's it for hands up.
Okay.
Let me look at.
Just in terms of the agenda check, are we ahead of our break? Or let me see. I don't have the agenda in front of me, unfortunately, because I'm in live mode.
All right.
We have another raised hand.
We have questions in here too. Are staff going to request single-family dwellings to reduce boxed out windows, etc.?
Sorry, one more time, Shannon, please.
Are staff going to request single-family dwellings to reduce boxed out windows?
The city isn't going to the Energy Step Code is a performance set of requirements, and so there's certainly no desire for us to restrict window boxes or anything like that. What we expect will happen, though, is because a window box has a lot of complex corners, they tend to be an area in which you get thermal bridging and heat energy lost through the building envelope. We suspect that as the energy performance requirements go up, that builders will become more judicious in their use of things like window boxes and bay windows, and sort of fine detail push and pulls in the building envelope, because doing so will reduce the building envelope. And we expect that there will be a shift more towards the use of color and texture and patterning and materials in order to get a similar level of building articulation. But the city is not saying you can't do these things. It's just, all things being equal, putting a lot of window boxes on a building is likely to show is likely to perform less well when you model that building than using fewer ones, using them more judiciously.
Yeah, just to add to that, excuse me. One of the things that as you go up the performance pathway to the top level of the step code, step 5, or doing a passive house project, those things like sort of energy leakage through the solid framing elements of your structure become quite important in terms of energy savings. Now, one way you can mitigate that is to have external insulation. So basically, you're eliminating that thermal break with an outboard insulation that, window box or not, gets covered. The framing elements get covered. So that's one way to mitigate it and preserve that same strategy in terms of form and character. So, but as I said, when you get up to the top level of the step code and working with your energy modeler and your energy advisor, I should say, they can start to advise on different strategies to and see the results, in terms of the model. So.
There's another question that's somewhat similar. How will the city restrict? How strict will the city be on designs if a client is paying several $1 million for a lot and wants to have large windows? How can we coordinate to have that with staff approval? This is a question on single-family homes.
Right. So again, the city has nothing against hard windows. What we're saying here is that in general, large windows, particularly on north-facing windows, that can be a source of heat loss. A south-facing window can be a source of unwanted heat gain and overheating in the summer, and that will be reflected in the energy models. So the city does not have a problem with large windows. it may raise issues with the energy modeling of the house. And so it is just something to be mindful of and to look for strategies to ensure that you can have the large windows while still meeting the high performance energy requirements. And there are a number of ways that this can be accomplished, but it is something that will probably need more attention as the requirements increase over time.
And if I
And then-
may, there's you know, in terms of high performance windows, you're probably looking towards at the top end of the performance, you know, considering things like triple glazed units. And also the framing element around the windows that would be thermally broken, so you don't have that thermal transfer through the frame. Because actually the window frame is the most energy inefficient component of a window, not so much the clear glass. You also see more clear field windows without a lot of sort of muntins and mullions in the middle. Because if they're framing elements that the glass sits on, then that's another thermal issue to deal with. So the actual in the high performance sort of passive house standard windows, you'll see a lot of clear glass and just a simple frame around the edge. That's thermally broken. So, and they can be, excuse me, they can be as large as you want. So on the south side, you got to have considerations for overheating and things like that. So maybe some overhead shading on the windows and things like that. But like once again, all that stuff is a conversation in terms of the design conversation you have with your designer, architect, and energy advisor in your proposal. So,
but there's nothing in our form and character guidelines that says don't have large windows. So
Here's
any-
another question.
Mhm.
If the project is going for step 3 with GHGI requirements, is the city going to allow a house that's going to install air source heat pump as a primary heating source and use separate natural gas boiler in-floor radiant heating system as a backup space heating source?
if the modeling shows that that building will come in at or below that 2.5 kilograms of CO2 per conditioned floor space, then yes, the city absolutely will allow it. That's the performance requirement that needs to be met. And if it does, then you're good.
Can I add a comment to your response, Nick?
Yeah.
So when you do the energy modeling, you're able to choose the secondary heating system. So when you wanted to use heating a natural gas boiler as a backup system in the modeling, you need to choose the natural gas boiler as a secondary heating system. And if the result shows that you comply with the requirement of the step 3, you're good to go. If not, you're not able to use the natural gas boiler as a backup. Maybe you need to switch it to, for example, electric-based boiler.
Another question, with external insulation, example EPS, will we lose square footage inside the home, correct?
No, you do not lose square footage inside the home. This is a measure that was actually brought in when we first introduced the energy step code. And so walls that are thicker than the standard 6.5 inches, like for instance, through the use of external insulation, that becomes a credit. And so you do not lose any floor space by having a thicker wall. And that's actually something we are going to be talking specifically about right after the break.
Okay, and that looks like about it. We're just right on schedule
Awesome.
for our bio break.
fantastic. Great questions. Thank you for those questions, actually. So 5 minutes, I think, is what we had planned.
Yep.
Just for a quick recess, and we'll join you, I guess, close to the top of the hour, right?
Yeah, if
5
everyone can
minutes,
come
5
back
minutes
at
to.
8:55.
There we go. All right. See you, everyone.
See you at 5. Hello again, everyone.
Nick, we have another question or a hand up.
Okay.
David Eaton would like to ask a question. David, if you want to unmute, you can ask your question.
I'm not hearing David. Are you on mute, David?
Sometimes it takes a second here.
Okay.
Okay, maybe sometimes people put their hands up by accident. Oh, here we go. He's here. Hi,
Oh.
David. Oh,
I think
It's
we
the
had,
lovely WebEx controls.
yes.
Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. So
I think we had a question from Vikas, Vikas Mesa, saying, are we thinking to stop having box windows to achieve energy efficiency? And I think the answer to that is, again, the energy step code is a performance code. So you can have as many box windows as you wish to have, so long as you meet the performance requirements of the energy step code. What we're saying here is that in general, it is box windows can be a source of more energy leakage through the building envelope than other parts of the building because they have a lot of complex corners. And so it is more difficult to achieve a high level of energy performance with features like box windows. As Norm points out, the use of external insulation is one quite effective way of dealing with that. So if you want to have box windows in your design, that's totally doable. It may require more effort, or you may wish to be more judicious in the use of box windows than you were previously in order to meet the energy performance goals. But the city isn't trying to get rid of box windows. It's just all things being equal, that kind of building articulation becomes more difficult as we move up in our energy performance requirements.
David put his question in the chat. What will the BP application look like by year end to cover all these requirements? Will there be a standardized spreadsheet?
So a fundamental part of the energy step code is the use of energy modeling. And there are standardized forms that are used in municipalities across British Columbia, including the pre-construction form where the building energy modeling is noted, and then of course an as-built form at post-construction. Mohammed, is there anything that you'd want to add to that general comment?
The comment regarding the boiler or regarding the BP applications?
Yeah, the BP applications.
Uh, we don't have a specific spreadsheet for this list of requirements, but we have it in some other forms, but not in the single, spreadsheet. We might can make it, yeah, by end of this year.
And I'll just add to that. So, currently we are like before when we were accepting step 3 homes, we required just the energy, compliance reports and all those things. And that's all we're going to keep asking for is just that. So nothing is changing in terms of the application. There's just a few additional things that you'll receive by doing step 4 homes in terms of floor area bonuses, depending on the thicker walls that what this presentation is so that you are aware of them. And we'll also have a bulletin on that, or at least we're adjusting a bulletin to kind of clarify it. And then there's an additional drawing that we will ask for exterior insulation, which we will get to later on in this presentation, but it's very simple. It's not a very complicated additional drawing to add.
So Norm, with that, shall we move along?
Thanks, Luca and Mohammed. And by way of introduction, these two gentlemen are going to be a part of the next section here, where we're taking a deep dive into the city's floor space bonus system, and it's been tweaked more recently, obviously in favor of high performance. And then towards the next section, we'll be talk about the minimum setbacks and that piece in terms of external insulation. So I guess we'll just proceed and move ahead here.
Okay. Welcome back. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
take it away.
Sure. Welcome back. My name is Mohammed, energy specialist at City of Richmond. Some attendee might have already talked to me, so it's nice to see me as well. So by July 1st, 2022, City of Richmond updated the energy step code requirement for step 3 and step 4, part 3 and part 9 buildings. And many application needs to build to a higher level of energy performance to meet this new energy step code requirement. As a result, many applications might need to use green building systems in order to meet the minimum mechanical efficiency requirement and also GHG emission requirement. But let's first clarify what is the green systems. The green systems are those mechanical equipment that use clean energy source to generate energy, such as the air source heat pump, ground source heat pump, VRFs, solar panels or small wind turbines, or even biomass boilers, or even mechanical equipment that for waste heat recovery, such as HRV and ERVs, and also the equipment for wastewater treatment. The applications use one or more of these mechanical equipment in their mechanical design are eligible for up to 2.35 square meter per dwelling unit for floor area occupied by these systems under some certain conditions. Application should have a designated mechanical room to place this green system inside, and if they put these systems in a room for other purposes, such as the laundry room, washroom, to the attic or ceiling, or bedroom closet, they're not eligible for this FAR bonus. And at the final inspection, the city inspectors would verify if that designated mechanical room meets the requirement. For FAR measurement, the floor area is measured from interior side of the wall, so surrounding walls are excluded from the measurement. In the next slide, I show you how you need to be eligible for this FAR exemption. Please go to the next slide.
I will, Mohammed. I just wanted to add, if I may, the big purpose behind this exemption and provision for this equipment is it's a direction for high performance is to utilize equipment like this, but also so it can be maintained on a regular basis. So if you've got an HRV, ERV, you've got filtration in that, and if it's in a room that's accessible and it's relatively straightforward to do that filter changes, then you're more likely to do that regularly. And so for servicing this equipment, it's really beneficial to have something in a centralized location, and it's accessible both to the owner and to anybody servicing it. So,
Thanks, Tom. So here are two examples that shows how you can be eligible for additional FAR when using the green system. In the left side, there is a designated mechanical room for HRV, and HRV has been located in there. I should emphasize that this is a designated mechanical room. It means that if you want, for example, add your AC unit to this space, you are allowed to do that, and you are still eligible for this FAR bonus. So be noted that up to 2.35 square meter, you would be eligible for up to 2.35 square meter. It means that if this space is more than 2.35 square meter, for example, it is 3 square meters, you only get 2.35 square meters. Or if it is 2 square meter, you only get 2 square meter. So be careful about up to 2.30 meters terms. On the right-hand side, you see that HRV has been located in the laundry room. So this is not eligible for this additional FAR, but you are allowed to put HRV in that space. There's no issue with that, but you are not eligible for FAR in that case. Please go to the next slide. Well, additional extra floor area bonus is for those applications that has to use a thicker wall than regular 2x6 stud wall in order to meet the envelope efficiency requirement due to the new energy step code requirement after July 1st. So as you know, for many applications, you need to, so for a step 4, the adjusted TEDI requirement is now tighter than before, and even a step 3 application needs to comply with adjusted TEDI for a step 3, and percentage better than reference house is not allowed anymore. So many application, depends on the archetype, many application needs to use a thicker wall in that case. So in order to compensate the floor area occupied by thicker wall, we give extra floor area bonus. For a 2x6 stud wall plus 2-inch of exterior insulation, there would be 2% extra FAR on top of the FAR. And also for 2x8-inch stud wall, again, there would be 2% of the FAR added to the primary FAR, and for 2x10-inch stud wall, there would be 4% of the FAR can be added to the floor area. And we came up with this number by doing several measurements on different archetypes, and the average values and average floor area occupied by a thicker wall came up with these numbers. And in terms of measuring the FAR for 2x8 wall and 2x10 wall, and also for a double stud walls, the FAR is measured from the stud wall exterior sheeting surface. For those applications using the 2x6 wall with exterior insulation, the floor area is calculated from outdoor surface of the exterior insulation. Can you go to the next slide? You can visualize this. Here example of 2x6 stud wall plus 2-inch of insulation, exterior insulation. So first of all, floor area is measured from exterior surface of the exterior insulation. So in this case, the FAR is calculated from the exterior sheeting, and it comes up with 146.5 square meter. So 2% of this value would be 2.93 square meter, and this can be added to the floor area for this application. So this should be repeated for the second floor for a complete application. Here is just example of the ground floor. For a complete application, this should be repeated for the second floor as well. And that extra floor area can be added to the total FAR. In the next slide, here is an example of the 2x8 wall. So as I said, the measurement here is taken from the exterior wall sheeting. And in this example, based on the exterior dimension, the floor area came up with 143.7 square meter. 2% of this FAR would be 2.87 square meter, and this would be added to the floor area as a bonus. So as you see that you have to use Tinker wall for increasing your level of building envelope and insulation. That means that some part of your floor area is occupied by Tinker wall, but we give this bonus and compensation to not using the less floor area when you use a better level of wall insulation.
And just to add, so these dimensions and calculations that Mohammed's showing in these details, this was just an example to show how we went around to the 2%. You will not have to do these calculations yourself. If you have a 2x8 wall or a 2x6 wall with 2 inches of exterior insulation, you just take the allowable density for the lot that you have, and you add 2% to that, and that's how much square footage you can build on the property.
Thanks, Luca. So yes, next slide. So there are more other FAR bonus for those applications that would like to apply for a step 5 and passive house. For a step 5 application that meets the requirement for energy efficiencies, mechanical energy efficiencies, envelope efficiencies, and air tightness score, as noted in this table, there would be 5% additional FAR bonus for these houses, and 100 building permit fee would be rebated, and also 5 square meter floor area would be given for using green system for a step 5 application. I need to emphasize that for a step 5 application that apply for incentives, they need to comply with the adjusted TEDI as mentioned here, 18 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. And you're not able to use percentage better for envelope efficiencies if you wanted to apply for a step 5 incentives. Next slide, please. No.
Sorry, I've grayed out the wrong part there. My apologies.
Oh,
Can we just speak to it anyways?
Yeah, let's speak to it anyway. So I've made it hard for folks to see it, but because I just screwed up there. But if you choose to build a passive house, and passive house is an international standard. So this is these requirements are not created by the provincial government, certainly not by us, but an envelope efficiency of 15 kilowatt hours per square meter of conditioned floor space per year. Mechanical, actually a total energy demand for the building of less than 60 kilowatt hours per square meter of conditioned floor space per year, and an air tightness of 0.6 air changes per hour. That is the passive house standard. If you build successfully to this standard, that is a 10% floor area ratio bonus. The green building system bonus increases from 2.35 meters to 5 meters. And again, there is a 100% rebate on the building permit fees. So this is in recognition that building to these very high levels of performance, certainly above the city's minimum performance levels, it will involve some additional costs, particularly in the first couple of houses that are built, as folks are learning how to go about building these high performance houses. And so these energy incentives are intended to offset those added costs and to encourage builders like yourselves to build to high performance levels and to make you whole for doing so. And so when we put it all together, we've now reviewed 5 options for building new homes in the latter part of 2022. We've got our minimum options, so the base option of step 5, where you have your choice of the building envelope pathway. And we've got the MUI targets and the air tightness targets. So step 5, step 4, or step 3 plus the low carbon energy system. Those are all minimum options, but we also have these high performance options that we've just reviewed of step 5 or building to passive house. And in those cases, the city is providing additional high performance energy incentives. But the other bonuses that we were just discussing about the green energy system and the thick wall exclusion, those apply to all houses at any of the levels that we're looking at here. So if you have a step 3 house with a thick wall, then you can get the thick wall exclusion. If you have a step 3 house with a mechanical room or a building green building energy systems, again, you can take advantage of that FAR exemption as well. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add at this point.
Well, I just wanted to say that there is some rebate from Killing BC for those applications that use electric-based heating system and domestic hot water system, up to $10,000.
Well, there certainly were, Mohammed, and in fact that was going to be a significant part of our presentation. But those rebates have been there's been a lot of interest in them, and the government tells us they are now spent out of those incentives for new construction. So we would have loved to have told you about these rebates available from the provincial government, but for the moment that is now fully subscribed. We're certainly hoping that the province allocates more money for those incentives so that they're available in the future. But for now, those incentives are all taken up.
Oh, thanks for update.
Yeah.
And I think we had a few questions in the chat, just kind of relating to these topics.
We also have a hand up. Should we do our hand up first?
Sure. Yes.
Ariel, I'll just ask you to unmute. Oh, here we go.
It's actually regarding the setbacks and the calculation of FAR. Is it calculated from building sheeting, right? And if let's say, for example, for 2x6 plus 2 inches, the sheeting is right on the before the installation of the installation. So that means it's 2% bonus would be in favor of 2x6 plus 2 because you will gain more space inside of the building. And the second question is about the setback. The calculation of the setback would be from the building sheeting, right? If that's the case, then that 2 inches would be encroached to setback for 2x6 wall plus 2 inches. Am I right?
No, so we're going to be taking the setbacks to your exterior insulation on the outside of the wall. So your setbacks have to conform from your property line to your exterior insulation. So you'll have to adjust the building slightly. And then your square footage calculation will be taken to the outside of the exterior insulation.
And we've got some slides coming up on that just next. So hopefully you'll get visuals and a discussion on exactly this point.
We have a question from Russ Barstow. Are there any plans to make allowances on covered outdoor space to assist with sun shading?
In terms of like mitigating building overheating. We don't have anything specific in terms of relaxations or incentives on that that are kind of energy focused. Good practice for preventing building overheating, and that through your energy model would kind of indicate where there's going to be potential for where there will be windows or sliding doors and those kind of things that are in areas that could be subject to contributing to building overheating. So you can passively mitigate those by external shading. I don't know if our building department colleagues want to comment further on anything else there.
Not that I'm aware of at this moment.
Okay, we have another question. What about side yard allowance for wall mount heat pump?
In terms of for side yards, from what I understand, it's I think the city of Richmond has issues with any kind of mechanical equipment in the side yard due to noise for the neighbor. But if you put it in the rear, right, or in the front, you won't have any issues. We're not going to treat that as your part of your setback. It'll just be an exemption, like an architectural feature or a roof overhang, something like that.
Okay, when will this FAR bonus for green building systems be implemented? Are we allowed to use this as of today?
Yes.
Great.
No.
Another question, would 2x6 with a 3-inch exterior get a 2% exemption?
So no, for a 3-inch of exterior insulation, you get 3% of the additional FAR. So if you use 1.5-inch of exterior insulation, you get 1.5% of your FAR.
And the same person asked, would a 2x6 with a 4-inch exterior get a 4% exemption?
Exactly.
Should it be better if calculated by the total wall thickness instead of 2 times lumber?
I think we did various different calculations of like how to do this. We tried a perimeter wall calculation, but that didn't work because it was just a never-ending cycle. So we settled upon these percentages as it being the easiest both for the designers to just implement and add to their overall density permitted for the lot, and also for plan reviewers to check so that we can issue permits faster.
The general principle is that the building code was developed on the assumption that exterior walls were about 6.5 inches thick. And so what we're essentially doing is calculating the difference between that and the thicker wall, and then providing that volume between 6.5 inches and the thickness of the wall as the FAR credit.
Another question, is there any penalty if floor bonus was granted but does not achieve step 5 at final inspection?
I'm assuming you just means you can't get final until you fix it.
Okay. Is the passive house option 5 incentive also available for net zero?
Well,
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but there's a nuance here. So step 5, according to the step code, is considered net zero energy ready. So if you build a passive house, you effectively reach the top level of the step code as well. So there's some definitional kind of differences between that. The net zero would fit into either one of those, passive house or step 5. Net zero energy ready. A net zero house in its true form, has to have probably consideration for some on-site energy generation to kind of net that out on an annual basis to be considered a net zero energy home. But it definitely infers in BC anyways an all-electric solution because of our very low carbon grid energy, where you can tap into the provincial grid, and if in an all-electric home you're already very, very close to like zero emissions and that. But the energy piece comes from your net zero energy, comes from the considerations of the demand and all that through your energy model and looking at that. So.
Yeah, but so just to come at this from another way, the energy step code is defined by the province. They have defined the 5 steps for Part 9 buildings, and passive house is also defined in the BC Building Code as a means of meeting the energy step code. So if there's a different standard other than those ones, the 5 steps and passive house, that is not recognized by the BC Building Code. And so your building would need to comply with, you know, step 3, 4, 5, or passive house as we've laid them out here in these options.
We'll just go through the next couple quickly. Why have townhouses been excluded from Richmond energy incentives?
That's a interesting question. And so basically our passive design exclusions policy that led to these additional incentives for originally step 4, 5, and passive house. They came through a council referral where they asked staff to come back with proposed incentives for upper level step code homes and passive house. But they in the referral to staff, they specifically said single detached and duplex homes. So this first iteration of that addressed that side of Part 9 construction. Townhomes were not included in that referral, but we've noted in our new community energy emissions plans that we want to develop similar incentives and exclusions for other forms of Part 9, like triplexes and townhomes and quads, those kind of things, as well as larger buildings. So that's in our work plan to do because it's in our community energy and emissions plan. But at this point, we don't have them, but we're looking to develop those.
Do these allowances apply to ALR lands? Currently, they don't.
Yeah, currently they still do not. As per our zoning bylaw, the incentives for the thicker walls and the step 4 requirements, they don't apply to ALR land at the moment.
Okay, and then with this extra 2% or 4% FAR due to 2x8 or 2x6 walls.
No, I guess the rest of the question comes from the next comment.
Is there relaxation on rear yard and side yard setbacks as they're pretty tight already?
No, so with in regards to setbacks, as I said, for exterior insulation, there is no relaxation on setbacks. You have to take your setbacks to those exterior insulations, and you have to take your square footage to the outside of those exterior insulations, if that is the type of wall you have chosen to use on your home.
Do we need to move on with the presentations and then revisit the rest of the questions afterwards?
Sounds good, Shannon. So
Okay.
we'll move on.
Thank you.
And topic of conversation already in terms of that, and a deep dive into this a little further. Luca, were you covering this?
I don't think I was, but I can.
Okay.
That's fine. So yeah, so for buildings with exterior insulation, so we're going to be measuring your setbacks from the property line to the outside of those exterior insulations. For buildings with external insulation, the distance from the property line to the building foundation will be larger than the minimum required setback. So there'll be a difference between where your insulation is, that's your setback, but then your foundation will be set a little bit further in. So those shifting of the foundations by, let's say, 2 inches, if you had a 2-inch exterior insulation, you have to adjust that for your building and for your square footage calculations. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as part of your application, you're going to include a site plan, which you already do as a designer, but you just have to be aware that when you're drawing your site plan and you're drawing your footprint of your home, you're drawing to the outside of your exterior insulation. Additionally, the only additional thing we'll ask for is for you to provide a foundation plan with the lot line shown with the adjusted setbacks for the foundation itself. This is important for forms inspections so that inspectors on site know exactly where your forms need to be, and that we can also, as plan reviewers, check it against your structural drawings so that those dimensions on the structural foundation plans match your architectural drawings of the foundation plan. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a home with exterior insulation. So you can see the setback in the corner is measured from the property line to the exterior insulation. So in that sense, and you can look at all the dimensions, they're all measured to the outside of the exterior insulation. So this is where we're going to take your square footage from. This is where your limiting distance is going to come up for all your windows on your sides. But what we're going to ask for additionally is, next slide, please, is a foundation plan on its own without the exterior insulation. So now you can see that the setback will be the setback, whatever it is, 4 feet plus 2 inches. And all of your dimensions have now been adjusted to just show the dimensions of the foundation wall itself. So this is the same home, just without the exterior insulation removed. So you'll provide us the setbacks on this drawing so that the inspectors have something to refer to. And then also, we're hoping that this will help you coordinate with your structural engineers to make sure that all of your dimensions on this plan match their dimensions on their foundation plans. But again, just to clarify, this additional plan, foundation plan, will only be asked for when using external insulation. If you're using a 2x8 wall or a 2x10 wall, we will not ask for this additional drawing. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Luca and Mohammed, on that deep dive on those. Any questions? Any further questions on this?
There are some questions. I think we've already covered the requirements and regulations of installing a heat pump, have we not? No side yard?
Yeah,
That one we did, yes.
Yeah. Does CHBA net zero labeled homes get any incentives?
Not from the city.
Okay. What efforts have been made in Richmond to be consistent with other municipalities?
The
Go ahead, Nick.
yeah, I think the cities are in conversation with each other. Certainly, with the new BC 2022 coming into effect, which is going to require step 3 as a minimum. There's simply less options for municipalities to choose from. We're certainly seeing many municipalities go to step 5 as a default option, with step down options for folks that put in low carbon energy systems. The province it has got their draft carbon pollution standard that is now out for comment, with the idea that that will be introduced in the new year, and we have a lot of municipalities that are signing on to that as well. So there is, I think we're going to see increasingly a convergence on very similar requirements as we move forward to 2025 and 2027. There are still some differences in details. The city of Richmond, for instance, has our administrative requirements where we don't allow the use of the percent better than reference house for a building envelope at step 3 and step 4. That is a policy that has not yet been adopted by other municipalities. So that is something that is at the moment unique to Richmond. But our feeling is that is consistent with a transition to net zero energy ready buildings. And so, that is one area of difference. But like I say, generally speaking, we're seeing closer coordination and a narrower range of variance between municipalities as we're going forward.
How does the step code work in with respect to major renovation projects?
So the step code is intended for new construction and in that section of the code. With respect to renovations and significant renovations, now there's nuances there, but for the most part, the province is working on basically what we call an alteration code for 2024, which will start to define energy performance standards as part of that alteration code. And there's a number of sort of workshops and conversations and webinars that are coordinated through the province with invitations to basically all sectors to participate and provide input as that's developed. That probably will principally be our guide for performance in terms of that. I don't believe a step code format is anticipated in that alteration code, but certainly performance characteristics will be defined from an energy and potentially a greenhouse gas emission perspective. Nick, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, just to reiterate that the energy step code does not apply at present to renovations and additions.
Yeah, I believe just my only addition to that is depending on how major the renovation of a home is, it may or may not require an HPO form if it is significantly renovated. If it's determined that the home is significantly renovated, that an HPO form will be required, I think at that point, then I think the energy step code will actually kick in. Currently, once the new procedures come in, I think it'll be more clarity, but I think that's the line at this current moment.
And I would like to add that for Part 3 buildings, if there's any renovation or addition, there would be some sort of energy requirement for that addition and renovation, but like NECB and ASHRAE 90.1, but not energy step code.
Okay, for Luca, we have a question. If there's no setback relaxations and we have to calculate FAR to the exterior insulation, do we gain or lose FAR overall when using 2x6 walls and a 2-inch exterior insulation?
Yeah, so just to give you an example, so with a 2x6 wall with 2 inches of exterior insulation, so you get the 2% bonus. So let's say your lot was allowed 3,000 square feet. You would apply 2% to that, which means you can have now 3,060 square feet. So you get an extra 60 square feet to use on the property wherever you can, as long as you can meet the setbacks and all the building envelope requirements of the zoning bylaw. So yeah, you'll get an extra 60 square feet to use.
Okay, and with the move by many politicians for faster BP approvals, will all these changes now make approvals review slower?
In my experience, as a plan reviewer now for almost 6 years, building permits, it doesn't seem to matter which municipality, they just get more complicated. They don't really ever get simplified unless the politicians are actually willing to make those changes and implement them. But usually the codes just get more complicated and the procedures get more complicated. And it's my job to help designers navigate through all this and do my best to help you guys so that, I can get the permits off of my desk and into your hands.
That's nice. If setbacks are measured to the exterior sheathing or exterior insulation, is that to say that the cladding, including rain screen, can extend into a yard setback?
That is correct, yes.
And last question for now is, isn't the limiting distance measured from the outer cladding, not the insulation? Cladding, sorry.
We're trying to measure it to the windows themselves. We know that the windows will project into those exterior insulations slightly, but not necessarily into the cladding. So we're going to ignore the cladding for limiting distance, but we will not ignore it. We will not ignore the exterior insulation for limiting distance.
And then we've got a hand up by Ariel. Ariel, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, actually, I've got two different answers from Norm and Nicholas about the incentives for 10%, which was when it's a passive house, which is not a passive house, a net zero. Are we going to get 5% or 10%? Can we clarify what it is? And regarding the passive house, you got to get a certification, and that it costs money. Sometimes some of the clients don't like to go through the certifications and just build step code 5 and add some sort of creating their own electricity to add to the grid. So how we can basically make sure that this is net zero, or how we can get the certification which is above step code 5 to get that extra 5% bonus.
Just in terms of the logic behind the incentive program for the passive design exclusions, that extra 5%, which brings it to 10% FAR bonus for passive homes that meet or achieve the passive house standard. It was partly to compensate for those additional costs of the certified passive house designer or certified passive house consultant, plus some of the certification costs. So that was looked to that with a additional FAR bonus to help offset that, plus the waiving of the permit fees in both cases, both at step 5 and at passive house was to help that a bit. So, I mean, in the long run, we're always open to kind of improving and modifying our incentive packages as we go forward. So any suggestions that you have, and you can contact Nicholas and I directly, and we'll put those take those into consideration, because we're looking to continually improve our incentive packages and expand them, of course. So it's always a hopefully a positive path forward. But that was the original intention there, was just to recognize the additional certification process that's involved in the passive house standard, because it's quite rigorous. So.
And on top of that 10% extra FAR, they can get up to 5 square meter for using green system instead of 2.35 square meter. This is another bonus, I guess, for passive house.
Great. I have time for questions towards the end. And just to kind of wrap it up, I wanted to bring some information forward on some training subsidies, training offer that the city has standing with BCIT, and particularly the high performance zero emission building lab in the School of Construction, where they do all kinds of courses. And so just before I get into the slides, we had our first round in 2021, fall 2021 and winter 2022. And in that 12 students, so they could be designers, architects, builders, trades that have had a project in Richmond, or planning to have a project in Richmond, or currently have one. That's how we, that was the only restriction there. But they took advantage of that 50% subsidy on a number of courses, like zero emission buildings all in one. I think one or two folks took the passive house tradesperson's course, which is quite vigorous as well, and zero emission building enclosures and air tightness workshops as well. So a number of things happened. 12 students enrolled in those 2 semesters, I guess. And the feedback from the course was 95% of students were satisfied with the knowledge developed on the BC Energy Step Code, building science, air tightness, and assembly details, and mechanical systems. 95% of the attendees felt confident that they could make or influence decisions in the design and construction of the top level of step codes projects at the top level. And 75% of the attendees felt confident after they took the courses that they could achieve a step 5 air tightness target on their next project. And so that would be, in terms of step 5, no more than 1.0 ACH at 50 pascals. So, so the revised program, I'll just get into the slides here. they've sorry about this. My apologies. They've set up a micro-credential course, which consists of 4 courses. Fundamentals of zero emission and zero energy and passive house buildings, air tightness and low TEDI enclosures, residential mechanical systems for zero energy and zero emission buildings and passive house buildings, and introduction to solar photovoltaic and electric systems for those same buildings. So these are all online classes. They tend to be all evening. And the program, these courses can be completed in 2 terms. There's 4 courses involved. So 72 hours in total. The fall intake has already started, so they have 1 course underway. So you could actually enroll in this and take 1 or 2 of these courses and then continue them into the next into the I guess winter 2023 session, if you will. And the city is offering through BCIT a 50% tuition discount on these courses. Included with this is if you kind of have a preference for hands-on and in-person instruction, you can get an additional 2 credits for it's a 24-hour in total on air tightness and low TEDI enclosures. So this is a hands-on lab in the high performance construction lab at BCIT. And if you enroll in this, you don't have to take the online equivalent course on that, but you get a lot more, I guess, in-person, hands-on, in-lab time. And if that's something to think about, you can also look at this. This particular course is offered 3 times annually, so both in the fall this year and into January, and of course the spring. Once again, 50% tuition discount is available. We're also opening up the discount package to for those that are interested in actually that have a construction consultancy or operation where they're looking to improve or bolster their skills in supervising and administering on-site construction of high performance buildings at the net zero and passive house level. So this is once again is a micro-credential course consisting of a number of components to be completed. So if you're coordinating or supervising smaller teams and sub-trades on Part 9 projects or even larger, more complex wood frame projects, this course might be for you. And gets you into the details on on-site characteristics of managing compliance and the performance and achieving the performance requirements of STEP code and passive house standards, and also preparing for the upcoming changes to the National Building Code. So once again, that program is offered as part of this package. And so basically, just as a mention, BC Housing Builder Licensing, October 22, new requirements for energy step code training, obviously references these courses as well as one of the ways to achieve it. And BCIT's courses, as I mentioned in this, are equivalent to all 8 of the mandatory energy step code CPD training modules needed for builder licensing. So it's something to consider on that pathway to maintaining, as a builder, to maintaining your CPD, that taking these modules, especially the new ones, will qualify. So these ones, 1001, 1120, and 1140 are the courses that are particular for the this energy step code CPD training modules in terms of the equivalency. And basically the columns here just reference last year's previous course equivalencies just for comparison, but they've been reformatted and renumbered for this year and next year. So how it works is basically the courses are online or in person or a combination of both. These are eligible for that 50% tuition discount from the City of Richmond. So if you've got questions about the courses or micro-credentials, you can contact me directly by email or Mary McWilliam at BCIT. And I'll repeat this in a second on the next slide. Mary McWilliam is one of the heads of the arrangements in terms of the training programs and the setting up the curriculum, and very, very helpful and very informative. If you have any questions, you can go right direct. So here's how to participate. So you can contact BCIT directly and mention this program and mention that you have a project that's in Richmond or will be in Richmond, and just have that discussion so that it can be confirmed you're eligible for the tuition subsidy. Once again, Mary McWilliams' contact is there. And then after that, BCIT will register you for the selected courses and confirm your portion of the tuition fees owing, which is 50%. And then you make that tuition payment for the reduced payment amount. So pretty much 3 easy steps. If you're interested, please take advantage of that. We have a certain amount of funding available, but it's still fairly robust to cover certainly the fall and into next year. So have a look at their curriculum, give it a think, and if you're looking to really bolster your training chops in meeting the top level of the step code and Passive House, this is definitely one way to do it. And that's it. That rounds everything up. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
I don't see any questions in the chat right now or hands up, but we can give it a few minutes. Oh, does the city have any other 50% fee incentives?
With respect to training, these are the only ones that we've identified, mainly because these are tied directly to the sort of high performance direction we're heading in new construction, i.e. upper levels and top level of the step code and Passive House standards. So this is basically one way to help support industry in success in that pathway. So.
Sorry, I misread the question. Do any other cities have a 50% fee incentive?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm not aware. I believe a couple of cities were doing this. I think the city of New Westminster and the city of Vancouver have for a period of time done this as well. So, and others might be doing that as well.
We're getting lots of thank yous. Guess we could let people go early and enjoy their 10 minutes.
Sounds good. Nick, I don't know if we want to talk about the next Builder Breakfast and maybe some thoughts on that. We had a few slides that we didn't include because we were quite concerned that we had quite a lot of content to get through in 2 hours. But for our next Builder Breakfast, we're thinking it will be a speaker event and potentially looking at embodied carbon in new construction. Some really interesting and I guess basically informative and influential work has been done by a group called Builders for Climate Action. And particularly in terms of looking at case study work in the city of Nelson, where they looked at, I think, 36 Part 9 projects completed at various levels of the step code and did calculations using a particular tool on the embodied carbon content in these various Part 9 buildings. Interesting results and informative in terms of the larger group that was looking across Canada at this and just kind of getting an understanding of that whole process and how decisions at the design stage can influence that different levels of embodied carbon content in buildings. And this broadly is a pathway that's coming down the road in terms of more and more people paying more and more attention to this. And projects actually recording and doing the basically assessment of and calculations on embodied carbon using various tools that are available. So we're looking to have that as a subject of one of our upcoming Builder Breakfasts, potentially in December, and then into next year. Probably looking at doing a low carbon energy system deep dive on heat pumps again and mechanical systems potentially. Nick, I don't know if there's anything else we want to add on that.
I know that Mohammed was interested to bring forward an item with regards to under slab insulation.
Right.
And so that's something that we'd be looking to bring forward to bring some clarifying information there. There has been interesting developments in the cost of natural gas, of course, this year, and that does have implications for the cost competitiveness in operations of heat pumps relative to natural gas furnaces. So that's something that I'd be interested to share with folks. As I noted earlier on, I went through some of the expected design implications of higher levels of energy performance requirements. If folks are interested in doing a deeper dive into that and exploring that more deeply, let us know. That's certainly something that we can bring forward as well. So if you guys have things that you would like, more information that you would like to hear from us on various topics with regard to meeting energy and greenhouse gas performance requirements, let us know, and we'll do our best to bring that information to you.
And just one final thing, will this, because I saw someone ask in the chat, so will these slides be available to everybody, both in terms of the designers and then also in terms of us city staff? Because I did see many designers that I work with in the meeting, which is great, but there was also many that I didn't see, so they would probably want to have this information as well, and that I can send it to them. So I'm just curious where that will be.
Well, for one thing, we do record the webinar and we post it on our website. And what we do is we send like sort of a thank you email in a week or so, and we add the link to the site so people can watch the webinar.
Excellent.
And we usually make the slides available as well, and we can certainly do that in this case too. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. It's 9:56, and it seems like our work is done here. So.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Oh, so Norm, you're on mute, but thank you.
Yeah. I just noticed a raised hand, but
Oh, I did see a question, Norm. There was a question inquiring about the cost of those BCIT courses that we're providing 50% funding for.
oh yeah, good one. I didn't put those in because it's kind of variable. But if you want to contact me directly, I can point you to where those are on the website, and they tend to be on average anywhere between 265 to upwards of 300, 400 per course, depending on the course. So.
There's another question too. Do you qualify for the fee subsidy if you don't have a project going, or do you need to have a project happening to qualify for the subsidy?
So the way we're focusing it on projects, that ultimately would be in Richmond or have been in Richmond. So, but we realize that our building design and construction community, oftentimes has projects all over the region. So, but if you have had a project in Richmond previously, or are planning to have one, or you currently have one underway, that's kind of broadly what we're looking at as the boundaries on the subsidy. So.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
Call it officially closed. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.